forest doesn't warn you, it watches quietly. Out there, footsteps appear behind you with no one in sight. Shadows move between the trees, and the deeper you go, the more the woods feel alive. Tonight, we're stepping into the kind of forest stories people never forget, because something out there didn't want them to leave. Welcome back to Scary Nights by Malik, where we explore the stories most hikers refuse to talk about again. Get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, because these aren't just tales from strangers online. These are real encounters from people who walked into the forest thinking they were alone and learned the hard way they weren't. Let's begin. Aaron grew up near a small mountain town in North Carolina, right at the edge of the Appalachian woods. He was one of those people who felt more at home among trees than people, quiet, patient, always carrying a camera around his neck. He worked as a wildlife photographer, spending nights in tents and waiting hours for a single perfect shot. Last October, he told me he wanted to explore a place called Black Hollow Ridge, a stretch of forest that even locals avoided. They said the trails there didn't stay the same, that compasses spun uselessly, and that sometimes the woods themselves made sounds they shouldn't. Aaron laughed it off. He said myths make for the best photos. He left one afternoon with his gear, planning to camp overnight near an abandoned ranger cabin he'd found on an old map. The sun was setting when he sent me his last text. "Signal's weak out here. Gonna record the night sounds. This place feels old." He didn't text again. The next morning, he showed up at my door looking pale and hollow-eyed, his camera bag soaked through, shoes caked with mud. He didn't say a word for a long time, just sat there, breathing heavy, hands trembling. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. "I heard it," he said. "I don't know what it was, but I heard it." He told me what happened after sunset. He had just finished setting up camp near the cabin, broken windows, moss climbing the walls, the roof half collapsed, when the woods went quiet. Not just calm, silent. No crickets, no rustling leaves, no wind. Even the air felt heavier. Then, faintly, he heard it. 3 soft whistles, short, repeated, somewhere beyond the trees. He thought it was another camper at first, maybe a hiker lost in the dark. He called out, "Hey, you okay out there?" No reply. The sound came again, the same 3 notes, but closer now. Aaron shone his flashlight toward the noise. The beam caught on tree trunks, mist, and empty air. He said it felt like something was hiding just beyond the edge of the light. He tried to ignore it and went inside the cabin. The floorboards creaked under every step. He unrolled his sleeping bag, set his recorder by the window, and tried to convince himself it was just the wind. But around midnight, the whistling started again, closer, louder. 3 notes, then silence, and then footsteps, slow, crunching leaves outside the cabin. Aaron froze. He said it was so dark he could barely see his hand in front of him. The footsteps stopped right by the window. He whispered, "Hello." That's when something tapped the glass. Once, twice. He said it wasn't a knock. It was more like someone dragging their fingernail across the window pane. Aaron grabbed his flashlight and aimed it at the window. But the moment the light hit, the whistling started again, this time right outside the door. He bolted. He didn't even bother packing. He ran through the trees, flashlight bouncing, breath ragged. He said he could feel it following him, not running, just walking steadily behind. The whistle never stopped. It echoed through the trees, sometimes ahead of him, sometimes behind, always the same 3 notes. When he finally reached the trailhead, he saw lights from the ranger station. He burst inside, shaking, shouting for help. The ranger on duty, an older man named Harris, calmed him down, gave him water, and asked what happened. When Aaron described the whistling, Harris went quiet. After a long pause, he said softly, "You weren't supposed to be out there." That section's been closed since '94. 2 search and rescue boys went missing near that same cabin. They were looking for a lost hiker. Only thing they found was his recorder. And on it, someone was whistling that same damn tune. Aaron said he didn't sleep that night. The ranger stayed with him until dawn. When they went back for his camera the next morning, his tent was torn open and the recorder was hanging from a tree branch by its strap. The recording was mostly static, except for the last few seconds. There was breathing, then 3 soft whistles, and a voice, almost playful, whispering, "Found you." Aaron moved away 2 weeks later. He quit photography, sold his equipment, and hasn't set foot in a forest since. Sometimes when we talk on the phone late at night, I'll hear him pause mid-sentence. Then he'll say, barely above a whisper, "Hold on." I think I hear it again. He never finishes the call after that. If you ever find yourself walking through the Appalachians after dark and you hear 3 soft whistles drifting through the trees, don't stop, don't call out, just run. Because whatever's out there has been waiting a long, long time for someone new to answer. Daniel had only been working at the Briar Creek Ranger Station for 2 weeks when it happened. The forest stretched for miles, thick and uneven, full of twisted oaks and black pines that blocked out the sky. The locals called it the Lantern Woods. They said strange lights moved through the trees at night, orange and slow, like lanterns swaying in a cold wind. Daniel didn't believe in ghost stories. He thought it was probably campers or kids messing around. He liked his night shifts, quiet, steady work, just him, the radio, and the hum of the generator outside. But on one foggy March night, everything changed. It was a little past 2 in the morning. Daniel was sitting at the desk, filling out his shift report, when the power flickered. The lights dimmed, then came back, then flickered again. The radio hissed with static, and the generator coughed outside. He sighed, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped out into the cold. The fog was thick enough to hide the trees, and the air smelled faintly of rain. He could barely see past the edge of the porch. Then he saw it, a soft orange light glowing deep in the woods. It moved gently, swaying side to side. He frowned. "Hello," he called out. "Park's closed. You need help finding the trail." The light stopped. Then it began drifting closer. Daniel squinted through the fog. The glow was too warm to be a flashlight. It looked like fire, an old lantern flame. "Sir," he said, taking a few steps forward. "Stay where you are. I'll come to you." He started walking down the trail, crunching through wet leaves. Every step he took made the air colder. His breath turned white. Somewhere nearby, water dripped slowly from the trees. The glow floated between 2 pines, about 50 feet ahead. Daniel lifted his flashlight, but the beam barely cut through the mist. He could see the light clearly now, bright, round, and steady. Then it stopped moving. Daniel hesitated. "You hurt or lost?" he called out again. No answer. The smell hit him next. Smoke. Damp, heavy, burnt smoke. His stomach tightened. He took one more step. And that's when he realized the lantern wasn't being held. It was floating. Daniel froze. The light hovered in midair. No person, no outline, no shadow. Just the orange flame, swaying gently, a faint crackling sound beneath it. The woods were silent. His flashlight flickered once, then went out completely. He backed away, his pulse thundering in his ears. The light drifted toward him, slow, deliberate. He turned to run back to the station, but another glow appeared behind him, then a third to his right. 3 lights, all moving through the fog. He ran, branches whipped his face, boots slipping on the wet ground. The forest came alive with faint whispers and the soft crackle of fire. The smell grew stronger, filling his lungs until he could barely breathe. By the time he reached the station, the clearing was full of orange light. He slammed the door shut, locked it, killed his flashlight, and crouched below the window. His breath came out in gasps. Outside, the lanterns floated closer, their glow spilling through the glass. He could hear faint footsteps, slow, dragging just beyond the wall. Then one light stopped outside the window. The flame flared bright, almost white. Daniel looked up, and in the reflection of the glass, he saw a face, charred, blackened, eyes hollow and glimmering. Its mouth opened wide, but no sound came out. He dropped to the floor. The room filled with the smell of burning wood. The radio burst to life with static, then a single voice whispered, "Follow." The lights flickered once more, then vanished. When dawn came, the forest was still. Daniel sat outside by the generator, covered in ash, eyes distant. He didn't remember unlocking the door. He didn't remember walking outside. The next ranger found him sitting there, shaking. Daniel quit the same day. A week later, a cleanup team found 3 old lanterns hanging from a branch near the station. The metal was blackened, the glass cracked, each one holding a burned candle stub. Beneath them was a half-rotted sign that read, "In memory of the Rangers who perished in the Briar Creek Fire, 1957. People still see lights in those woods, always 3, moving slowly through the fog like they're searching for something, or someone. The Park Service says it's swamp gas. Locals know better. They say the fire never went out. It just kept burning beneath the soil. And if you ever find yourself walking through Briar Creek after dark, and you see an orange lantern flicker in the trees, turn around, because once you follow the lantern man, he never lets you leave the woods again." Lena was the kind of person who found peace in silence. Every weekend she drove out past town, parked her truck by the edge of the woods, and hiked down to a small creek that cut through the valley. It was her escape. No traffic, no phone signal, just running water and the sound of birds. That spring, the rain had been heavier than usual. The creek swelled wider, and the current was faster, carrying branches and mud down from the hills. But that didn't stop her. On a Friday evening just before sunset, she parked her truck like always, locked it, and headed down the narrow dirt path. The woods were thick with mist. The air smelled like wet soil and pine. Everything looked dim, almost blue. She hiked for half an hour before reaching the creek. The water ran high and loud, crashing over rocks. She set up her folding chair near the bank, pulled out a small notebook, and started sketching. But after a few minutes, she noticed something strange. There was a shape caught against the far side of the creek, tangled in the roots of a fallen tree. At first, she thought it was debris, maybe a branch or a piece of old fabric. Then the water shifted, and it moved. Slowly. Lena froze. The shape was pale, too pale. She stood up, trying to see better, but the fog rolled thicker. She could just make out what looked like a shoulder, maybe even a hand. She whispered, "Hello, are you okay?" The shape didn't answer. The current tugged at it, rocking it side to side. Lena backed away. Her instinct screamed to leave, but she couldn't. If it was a person, she couldn't just walk off. She took out her phone. No signal, of course. She crossed the shallow part of the creek, the cold water biting at her legs, and got closer to the other side. That's when it turned its head. It wasn't a body, not really. Its skin looked like soaked paper, thin, colorless, stretched over something that wasn't bone. Its face was all wrong, smooth where the eyes should have been, with a slit where the mouth was. And then it smiled. Lena stumbled back, slipping on the wet stones, landing hard. The thing crawled out from the roots, slow and deliberate. Its limbs were too long, its joints bending backward. Water poured off its body as it rose to stand. It tilted its head, listening. The sound of the creek drowned everything else. Lena scrambled up, heart hammering, and ran. Branches whipped her face as she followed the path back up the hill. Behind her, she could hear it, splashing, dragging footsteps through the mud. Every few seconds, she heard that same soft, watery sound, like someone breathing through a wet cloth. She didn't dare look back. The trail twisted and dipped, and the mist made everything look the same. She ran until her lungs burned. When she finally stopped, she couldn't hear the creek anymore, just rain. She turned around. Nothing. The woods were silent again. She reached her truck near midnight. Her keys shook in her hand as she unlocked the door. When she finally got inside, she slammed it shut, locked it twice, and sat there gasping. The forest was still. Her headlights cut through the fog, lighting the trees in front of her. That's when she saw it. Standing just beyond the beams, that pale figure, wet, still dripping. Its mouth hung open, that slit stretching wider than it should. It didn't move, didn't blink. It just stood there, head tilted slightly, like it was curious. Lena started the engine, tires spinning in the mud before catching. The figure stepped forward once, then stopped, half hidden in the mist. As she drove off, she could still see it in the mirror, the pale shape standing in the same spot, watching. The next morning, the sheriff's office found her truck parked outside her house, door open, headlights still on. The seat was wet. There were muddy footprints on the road leading away from the driver's side, small at first, then deeper, wider, dragging marks mixed with them. No one ever found Lena. A search team went back to the creek a few days later. The water had lowered again. They didn't find her, but they found something caught under the same roots she'd seen that night. Her notebook, torn and soaked through. Only one page was still legible. On it, written in smeared pencil, were 3 words. "It followed me." If you ever walk by a creek after heavy rain and hear something moving beneath the water, don't look, don't call out, because sometimes what you see isn't drowning. It's waiting for you to come closer.